My name is Aurelia Winthrop. Since childhood, I have always been fascinated by the mysteries of existence, but I never imagined that one day I would have the courage to share something so intimate and inexplicable. Today, as I recount my experience, I feel a mix of hesitation and urgency. Hesitation, because reliving those memories makes me tremble, and urgency, because I know that each word carries the essence of a miracle. I'm not a writer nor a speaker. I'm just an ordinary person who, in a fateful moment, glimpsed the boundary between life and something greater. I clearly remember an ordinary morning in Atlanta, Georgia. The sun, still shy, fighting against the early morning shadows, crept through the cracks in the curtains of my room. To the distant sound of traffic and the soft murmur of neighbors starting their day, I prepared myself for another routine journey. However, on that March 15th, 2023, something inside me sensed that destiny was about to rewrite my story. As I adjusted the rearview mirror and checked the latest messages on my phone, an inner voice whispered, "Today, your life will never be the same." I didn't know if it was the result of tiredness or something that transcended the ordinary, but the feeling that the universe was conspiring in some way was undeniable. As I left the house, I met my neighbor, Mrs. Mabel, who always had a smile and a kind word. She greeted me with, "Good morning, Aurelia. Have a blessed day." And in that instant, I felt as if each syllable carried a secret blessing. On the way to work, as the car traveled along Atlanta's busy avenues, my thoughts wandered between memories and expectations. The city, with its contrasts, modern skyscrapers, historic neighborhoods, and vibrant culture, has always enchanted me. But that day, every face on the streets, every distant horn, seemed to compose a symphony that announced something extraordinary. I remember muttering to myself, "What does fate have in store for me today?" At every turn and traffic light, a gentle uneasiness blended into my routine. Perhaps it was the omen of the one who would transform my understanding of the world. My hands, firm on the steering wheel, hid an anxiety that I could barely contain. The familiar sound of the radio, which told the news and forecasts of the day, sounded like a reminder that life is ephemeral and full of surprises. As I drove, I remembered conversations with friends about the mysteries of existence and the search for answers. Life is a tangle of paths, and each choice brings us closer to the unknown. Marcus, an old friend and confidant, used to say. Today, however, I felt that my own words could gain new meaning, revealing a destiny that until then seemed reserved only for tales and legends. Every beat of my heart in that moment carried the promise of transformation. And even without fully understanding it, I knew that what was about to happen would exceed any expectations. It was in this whirlwind of thoughts and emotions that my journey began, not as a writer seeking fame, but as a silent witness to an encounter that would forever change my perception of the divine. That morning of March 15th, 2023, seemed as ordinary as any other. The clock read 7:45 when I left the house, the air still cool with the Atlanta morning breeze. I settled into my car, the radio whispering news and soft music, when suddenly, fate manifested itself in an unexpected and devastating way. As I drove down the main avenue, traffic moved at a predictable pace, but something seemed out of place. That's when, out of nowhere, a runaway truck appeared in my field of vision. In an instant that seemed to last for an eternity, the vehicle violated a red light and advanced towards me. "No, it can't be happening now," I screamed internally, as my eyes widened and my hands shook on the steering wheel. The impact was overwhelming. The thunderous sound of metal clashing, glass shattering, and the muffled screams of the truck's occupants filled the air. It all happened so quickly that for a brief moment, I completely lost my sense of time. The world around me turned into a sequence of disjointed images and distorted sounds. I remember feeling a shiver run down my spine, as if my body was being stripped of all protection. "Someone please help me!" I could hear someone shouting, but the words blended into the chaos. My heart was racing. Each beat marked a beat of panic and disbelief. The steering wheel slipped from my hands, and the car began to spin, as if it were in a macabre dance controlled by gravity and fate. The feeling of being suspended between life and death set in quickly. My body was thrown around, as if it were a stringless puppet, and I saw everything around me from an impossible angle. The pain, however, seemed distant, almost non-existent. It was as if, at that very moment, the physics of my being had come undone, leaving me to float in an ethereal state. The final crash was followed by a deafening silence, a silence that echoed the very essence of fear and surprise. Confusion took over the scene. Flashing lights from emergency vehicles, approaching sirens, and the frightened murmur of witnesses, trying to understand what had just happened. When I finally regained consciousness, I saw the roof of the car tilted and fragments of metal scattered everywhere. My ears were ringing and my vision was blurry. But there was something strange about the post-impact silence. It wasn't just the residue of the accident. It was a calm that contrasted sharply with the previous chaos. On the other side, confused voices mingled. "Are you okay? Stay calm. We're here to help." I heard a man, whose voice brimmed with genuine concern, as he slowly approached me. Although my mind was absorbed in the whirlwind of sensations, I became aware of the presence of someone trying to bring reality back. However, in that exact split second, I couldn't decide if I was living or if I had already left life behind. Each second seemed to lengthen as the final moments of impact unfolded in a series of flashes and memories. The smell of burning rubber, the constant vibration of the asphalt, and the feeling of helplessness were now integral parts of that experience that I never imagined having. Even immersed in the chaos, a part of me already sensed that this tragedy, although terrible, would be the prelude to something much bigger and inexplicable. When everything around me began to disappear, I felt as if existence itself became a mirage, a specter about to dissipate into thin air. For a brief moment, the physical world gave way to a welcoming void, where pain and fear no longer found space. I was suspended between life and death, in a dimension where time seemed to dissolve into an infinite pause, and every sensation was intensified in an indescribable way. I remember feeling an extreme lightness, as if my body, previously so heavy, had been replaced by a pure and subtle essence. I looked down and saw, no longer my physical form, but an ethereal projection of myself, floating freely. It was then that I realized I was experiencing something beyond human understanding, a state where the barriers between self and the universe disintegrated. This can't be real, or can it? I thought, as my mind sought to anchor itself in some logic, but rationality became useless in the face of the extraordinary. The feeling of peace that invaded me was so intense that, for a moment, all traces of panic disappeared. Every fiber of my being pulsed in a rhythmic, almost musical rhythm, and the silence around me was profound, as if the universe were whispering ancient and forgotten secrets. Suddenly, a soft light began to envelop me. It was not a blinding glow, but a gentle luminescence which warmed and nourished as if each ray carried a message of comfort. And then, as if emerging from all that light, a voice began to echo, a calm, serene voice, which seemed to emanate from every corner of that timeless space. "Aurelia, you are safe. There is no pain here, no sadness, just the truth of existence," whispered the voice with a clarity that touched every cell of my being. It was as if that message was written in the very fabric of the universe, and I, the privileged recipient, absorbed it completely. Even without seeing it, I could feel a presence that seemed to embrace me with infinite tenderness. As I let this feeling of bliss carry me away, glimpses of images began to form around me. I saw scenes from my childhood, laughter, games, and moments of pure innocence, as well as fragments of a future yet to be revealed, where the possibility of redemption and renewal shone brightly. Each vision was accompanied by a deep emotion, a reminder that, despite earthly pains, there was a greater purpose that governed my existence. "You are part of something much larger than you can imagine," repeated the voice, now with a tone that mixed authority and affection, like that of an old friend sharing a precious secret. I felt the energy around me intensify, and the connection with this dimension became almost palpable, as if I could touch it. The barrier between my consciousness and the universe became tenuous, revealing that existence is not just a set of isolated experiences, but a complex web of intertwined memories, emotions, and destinies. For endless moments, I was part of something bigger, a continuous flow of life and energy that transcended human understanding. This realization diluted the fear of the unknown, replacing it with a comforting certainty. I was, in fact, where I needed to be, absorbing a truth that would never be forgotten. My consciousness continued to float in this ethereal space, where reality dissolved into pure energy and love. Suddenly, the darkness of the accident receded, giving way to a splendor that surpassed all earthly description. The sensation was of being enveloped by a blanket of soft and welcoming light, which filled every corner of my being, as if every cell was awakening to a new dawn. As I let myself be carried away by that luminous embrace, the atmosphere vibrated with an energy that spoke directly to my soul. It was as if each particle of light carried with it the wisdom of ages and the tenderness of the deepest affections. I felt, almost palpably, that I was being guided to a place where love had no limits, where peace reigned supreme. All around me, light was not just a visual phenomenon, but a living, breathing presence with compassion and serenity. Suddenly, the energy began to concentrate, taking on a more defined form. The light, which had previously dispersed into countless beams, converged to a point that gradually outlined itself into a radiant figure. This shape, although made of pure energy, seemed to have contours that suggested the silhouette of a presence that I could never forget. The environment was filled with a silent melody, as if the universe itself was harmonizing this meeting into a divine symphony. "Welcome, Aurelia," whispered a voice that spread throughout the space, crystal clear and full of tenderness. Each word seemed to envelop me like a warm hug, dispelling any trace of fear or confusion. The voice did not come from a specific place, but from everything around. It was as if the cosmos itself was speaking to me. In response, my emotions overflowed with a mix of awe and curiosity. "Who are you? Why do I feel such peace?" I managed to murmur, still not fully aware that my voice would be heard in that transcendent state. The figure, slowly emerging from the light, approached with a grace that defied explanation. Its edges, although luminous, revealed a familiar shape, and the feeling of protection was intense, almost palpable. "I am the manifestation of truth and compassion," replied the presence, not just with words, but with every beam of light that emanated. "I'm here to show that, even in the darkest moments, the divine never abandons us." The environment seemed to pulse in unison with the message, as if each ray of light confirmed the veracity of that encounter. As I absorbed those words, I felt that time was stretching out, and reality was transforming into a scenario where all anguish gave way to a deeper understanding. I looked around and realized that the space was a living tapestry of colors and textures, where every movement of light told stories of love, loss, and redemption. It was a silent dance, where every glow had a purpose and every shadow was just the harbinger of a new revelation. "You were chosen to see the truth that many refuse to see," continued the voice, now softer, like a whisper of comfort. "The pain and agony he experienced are not punishments, but paths that lead him to the understanding of what is eternal." His words went deep, resonating within me in ways that could never be forgotten. I felt that every nuance of that encounter transformed me, showing that the true essence of life lies in the ability to transcend pain and embrace the light. So, at that moment, I understood that that place of light was not just a temporary refuge. It was a portal to the true essence of being, where the separation between the physical and the spiritual dissolved into pure communion. The presence, with its aura of unconditional love, guided me to a new level of existence, where peace and wisdom reign supreme. In the dim light of that dimension of light, where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual blurred, the aura that surrounded me gradually intensified until it took on contours that I would recognize as human. It was at that moment that, as if in a sigh of eternity, the serene figure of Jesus Christ appeared before me. His countenance radiated an inexplicable calm, and his eyes, deep and compassionate, seemed to harbor the wisdom of all ages. "Welcome, Aurelia," he said in a voice that mixed authority and tenderness, echoing in the silent space that surrounded us. His every word resonated like a balm for my soul, warming the most hidden parts of my being. I, still absorbed and amazed by what I was witnessing, felt a mixture of fear and reverence. My Jesus, how is that possible? My voice wavered, filled with doubts and conflicting emotions. Why do you call me by my name? What's happening to me? The words came out with difficulty, as if each syllable was a desperate attempt to find meaning in that whirlwind of feelings. He smiled gently, approaching with a grace that defied description. His eyes, filled with a light that seemed to have the power to penetrate my soul, met mine and enveloped me in an invisible embrace. My daughter, everything you experienced was part of a path that few have the chance to follow, he explained, with a serene and confident tone. The moment your body said goodbye to this physical world, your soul awakened to a new reality, one where the divine manifests itself in its purest and truest form. His every word seemed to dissolve the barriers I had erected in my heart, allowing me to feel a peace I had never experienced. I don't completely understand, Jesus. How can I carry this truth? How can I turn all the pain and confusion into a testimony of faith? I asked, as silent tears rolled down my face, marking the beginning of a transformation I could barely conceive. Jesus extended his hand in a gesture that combined compassion and firmness. Aurelia, every tear you shed, every moment of uncertainty, has led you to this very moment of revelation. The spiritual heritage of Black people, which for so long has been misrepresented in words of oppression, is actually a legacy of strength, resilience, and an intimate connection with the divine. This truth, my daughter, transcends pain and reveals the greater purpose of your existence. The environment around us seemed to pulse in tune with his words. I felt the energy condense around us, as if the universe was conspiring for me to understand the magnitude of that message. But, Jesus, how can I share this truth? How can I, so simple and vulnerable, carry this mission without getting lost in the immensity of this legacy? I asked, my voice choked with emotion. With a deep and serene look, he replied, "You don't need to understand everything right away, Aurelia. What matters is that now you know, the light that radiates from you is part of a greater purpose, a flame that must be kept burning to illuminate the paths of many. Trust in your journey, because even in moments of doubt, I will be by your side." His words remained with me, engraved in my soul, as the figure of Jesus began to merge again with the light that composed it. Little by little, its outline dissolved, but the feeling of security and the mission that he transmitted would never be erased in me. I stood there, immersed in that moment of sublime revelation, aware that my life had been irrevocably transformed, and that a new chapter was beginning, full of challenges and the promise of a redemptive truth. Still immersed in the light emanating from Jesus, my perceptions began to expand beyond what my mortal eyes could comprehend. The radiant figure, still present in my consciousness, spoke again, now with a voice that mixed ancient wisdom and infinite compassion. "Aurelia," he said, come closer, for there are truths that need to be revealed about the history you know." As I approached, the landscape around me began to transform. The colors became more intense and vibrant, and images that seemed taken from the oldest corners of time appeared before me, as if the past was unfolding in a large panel of memories. I saw scenes of people celebrating life in its fullness, with rituals and festivities that exalted the connection with the divine. In the midst of this vision, Jesus began to explain, "For too long, humanity has carried the burden of a misinterpretation, the famous curse of Ham." He paused, and the room fell silent in anticipation. Know that the curse pronounced by Noah, misinterpreted, was never intended to condemn a people or their inheritance. This curse, in fact, was directed at Canaan, not at all of Ham's descendants. His words rang with unwavering authority, as images of ancient African civilizations emerged as glimpses of a legacy of splendor. "Look at these kingdoms, Aurelia, kingdoms that flourished with knowledge, art, and spirituality. They were the guardians of an intimate connection with the divine, a heritage that many have tried to erase with lies and prejudice." As Jesus spoke, I saw vivid scenes, vibrant markets, sacred ceremonies, and wise leaders who guided their people with justice and compassion. These kingdoms were not marked by the curse, but rather by the blessing of understanding and spiritual power. he continued, his tone filled with restrained sadness at the injustice of historical events. The curse of Ham was a veil cast to obscure the true story, to justify the oppression and suffering that many suffered. But this truth can no longer remain hidden. I, with tears in my eyes, questioned, so the suffering that so many experienced was not divine punishment, but a distortion of real events. How can I reconcile so much pain with the truth I see now? Jesus looked at me with a tenderness that seemed to heal every invisible wound. Suffering, Aurelia, is a path, a mirror of Christ's own sacrifice. Black people, in their long journey of struggle and resistance, demonstrated a resilience that reflects the love and forgiveness that I taught. This pain, instead of being a sign of a curse, is the mark of a people who kept the flame of faith alive, even in the midst of adversity. As he spoke, each word seemed to dissolve the shackles of historical oppression, replacing the bitter legacy of the curse with a new narrative of strength and dignity. I want the world to know, Jesus continued firmly, that the true heritage of Black people is a divine blessing, filled with wisdom and a spiritual connection that surpasses the limits of humanity itself. May this heritage be recognized as an immeasurable treasure, capable of illuminating the future of humanity. The space around me seemed to pulse with the energy of those who had been unjustly oppressed, now claiming their truth. I felt an internal transformation, as if each word removed a layer of pain and replaced it with a renewed trust in the justice of the divine. At that moment, I understood that the legacy of Black ancestors was a beacon of hope, destined to illuminate the paths of those who still sought the light, even in the darkest times. When the light that surrounded me began to transform into a scene of ancient colors and sounds, I felt like I was being taken to a space where the essence of my ancestors, spirituality, took shape and life. Around me, the environment was transmuted into a vibrant landscape, where time seemed to merge with the memory of the people who, despite so much adversity, cultivated a deep and resilient faith. Suddenly, the scene took shape as if I were in a sacred village on the bank of a great river, under a sky painted in the colors of twilight. Men and women, dressed in costumes that mixed colorful fabrics and ornaments made of beads and shells, gathered in a ceremonial ritual. The rhythmic sound of drums echoed through the air, mixing with the whispers of the wind, as participants danced in perfect harmony with nature. The environment brimmed with life and ancestral energy, as if every movement, every beat, invoked the presence of the divine. "See, Aurelia," I heard a voice soft but full of conviction. It was Jesus, who now led me through this universe of tradition and faith. Our ancestors possessed such a deep understanding of the divine that they saw God in every falling leaf, in every drop of rain, in every song of the birds. For them, nature was not just a backdrop, but the very abode of the sacred. As I walked among the dancing figures, my eyes were drawn to an old woman whose presence exuded wisdom and serenity. Her eyes, marked by the stories of generations, met mine, and she approached with firm, compassionate steps. "My daughter," she spoke in a tone that seemed to carry the secrets of ancient times. Our ancestors knew how to transform pain into song and oppression into strength. Even when the world tried to silence us, our songs rose to the heavens like prayers of resistance. The elderly woman led me to a small space where a group of people were gathered in a circle. There, young and old clasped hands while singing songs that told stories of struggles, hopes, and reunions with the divine. "Every note you hear is a prayer, a testimony of faith," she said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. These songs were not just melodies, they were the soul of a people who refused to be defeated, who found in love and spirituality the strength to resist the darkness. As the images followed one another, I was transported to a vision where a group of women, in the middle of a crop field, stopped for a moment to gather in prayer. Calloused hands reached up to the sky, and their murmurs seemed to mix with the sound of the earth being plowed. "Even under tyranny, even in the pain of separation," I heard the old woman repeat, "faith was never forgotten. In each seed planted, there was the promise of rebirth, the certainty that the connection with the divine will not be extinguished." The atmosphere was filled with a feeling of communion, not just among those present, but with all of creation. I could feel the pulse of life in each beat of the drums, the delicacy of each gesture, the intensity of each silent prayer. This deep connection with the sacred revealed that African spirituality was not an isolated practice, but a continuous celebration of life, a hymn to the beauty and resilience of a people who, even in adversity, never stopped seeking the light. As the vision began to fade, a wave of gratitude and awe washed over me. I realized that the depth of this spirituality was an immeasurable treasure, a heritage that transcends pain and manifests itself in every ritual, in every song, in every sacred silence that echoes through the generations. As the vision of ancestral spirituality began to fade, I was enveloped by a new sensation, a deep and moving reflection on the meaning of the suffering that so many have endured throughout history. The scenery in front of me changed again, and now I found myself in front of a mural of intense scenes, images of faces marked by pain, but also illuminated by an unshakable faith. The environment oscillated between shadows and light, symbolizing the duality of moments of anguish and hope. I walked along a dirt path, lined with ancient trees that seemed to whisper stories of resistance. At every step, I felt the presence of those who, even crushed by oppression, found the strength to move forward. Among these images, I saw men and women kneeling in silent prayer, their tears mixing with the soil, as if each drop watered the seed of a future of liberation. As I absorbed this vivid narrative, a familiar, gentle voice echoed around me, bringing the comforting presence of Jesus. "Aurelia, see that every tear shed, every sigh of pain, has a meaning that goes beyond the immediate suffering," said he, his voice filled with a tenderness that seemed to transform the tears into a hymn of resilience. The suffering of Black people is not the result of divine punishment, but the reflection of the sacrifice that is mirrored in the pain that I myself carried on the cross. It is through this mirror of pain that the unique capacity to forgive and love is revealed. Jesus' words intertwined with the images before me. I could see, for example, a scene in a small makeshift chapel where a group of enslaved people gathered secretly, their faces illuminated by a faith that defied the chains of oppression. I heard a whisper through the crowd, "Even in pain, we find the path to redemption." In a distant corner, I saw a man, his eyes full of resignation and strength, singing a song that spoke of freedom and unconditional love. It was as if, in every note, the spirit of these people cried out for justice and recognition. "Forgiving does not mean forgetting," Jesus continued, "but transforming pain into a living testimony to the redemptive power of faith. The suffering of Black people is a mark of a history that resists oblivion, a legacy of courage that is reflected in the ability to transcend one's anguish." His words invoked a powerful image, a large mural painted with intense colors, where each brushstroke told the story of struggles, losses, and, above all, a faith that refused to be broken. As the vision intensified, I could hear the echo of ancestral voices, in unison, as if chanting a collective prayer of hope and resistance. "Our pain is our strength," I heard one of them declare firmly, "and every scar is a reminder that we survived, that we endured, and that our spirit will never fade." Pain, which could be seen as an unbearable burden, became a bridge to understanding a divine and unshakable love. Amid this whirlwind of emotions and images, I realized that suffering, far from being a mark of curse, was the fertile ground where the seed of forgiveness and reconciliation germinated. Every moment of agony had the potential to be transmuted into a lesson in compassion and resilience, mirroring the very essence of Christ's sacrifice. Thus, in that sacred space, the pain of Black people was revealed as a narrative of overcoming and of a faith that, even under the most extreme adversities, continued to shine with intensity. As the images and words dissipated, I was taken to a scenario where the future was drawn with vibrant colors and promises of renewal. The environment transformed again, this time into a vision that blended the now with what was yet to come, a time when Black heritage and resilience would assume a fundamental role in leading humanity to new horizons. I felt that, in that dimension of revelation, time was not linear. Past, present, and future were intertwined in a tapestry of possibilities and challenges. Jesus spoke again, his calm voice reverberating in a tone that mixed hope with determination. "Aurelia, listen carefully. The suffering and strength of Black people, preserved over the centuries, were not in vain. Every tear, every fight, every silent victory makes up a legacy that transcends pain and becomes a light for the entire world. His words seem to invoke a future where ancient wisdom would become the foundation for facing times of great change and uncertainty. As he spoke, the visions around me began to crystallize into scenes of a radiant future. I imagined a crowd of people, of all colors and backgrounds, gathered in squares and community centers, sharing stories, songs, and traditions that reached back to their African roots. The voices of these people sounded in unison, proclaiming the message that true strength lies in unity and the ability to forgive, even after the most intense historical pain. "You will be the ushers of a new era," Jesus continued, "where Black spirituality, resilience, and forgiveness will become a beacon for all humanity." In the midst of this vision, I saw leaders emerging, men and women whose commanding, compassionate presence symbolized the continuation of that legacy. Among them, I highlight a man with a penetrating gaze, whose name echoed with the authority of history, Marcus Jefferson. Marcus, a historian and community leader, saw himself not just as a keeper of memory, but as an agent of transformation. At his side appeared Evelyn Carter, whose sensitivity and courage transformed each gesture into an act of resistance and hope. Together, they symbolized the new generation, destined to confront injustices and build bridges between cultures and traditions. As the vision progressed, I could hear fragments of dialogue that revealed the divine mission. "It's not just about remembering the past," I heard a firm, serene female voice, "but about using it as fuel for a future of justice and compassion. Every battle, every achievement of our ancestors is proof that faith and perseverance can illuminate even the darkest corners." These words resonated in a setting where communities came together to celebrate their roots and fight at the same time to design a future that embraced diversity and global unity. The feeling that invaded me was that the destiny of Black people would be rewritten, not as victims of a history of oppression, but as architects of a new era. The spiritual heritage, previously distorted by misinterpretations and injustices, now revealed itself as an indispensable treasure to face the challenges to come. "You carry within you the flame of unconditional love and the strength of resistance that will never go out," proclaimed Jesus, as the light around us intensified, as if celebrating this divine mission. In this fusion of past, present, and future, I understood that the divine mission was not just a responsibility, but a gift. The Black heritage, enriched by centuries of struggle and faith, was destined to be the pillar that would sustain the hope of all humanity. The vision closed with the certainty that this mission would be accomplished by those who, like me, now carried the truth that, even in the most extreme adversity, light will always triumph over darkness. Upon returning to my body, reality set in gently, but the transformation was undeniable. I felt deeply grateful, but also charged with a new sense of responsibility, a calling that resonated with every beat of my heart. The experience that transcended the limits of the physical and the spiritual had left an indelible mark on me, revealing the true essence of the spiritual heritage of Black people, a legacy of light, strength, and love that needed to be preserved and shared, even if in a silent and intimate way. That morning, the sounds of the hospital became a backdrop to the thoughts racing through my mind, while Dr. Benjamin Harris, with his calm and comforting voice, assured me that everything would be fine. "Aurelia, you are strong, and you have already taken a big step towards healing." I felt that something bigger had taken root in me. The doctor's words mixed with the echoes of the revelations I experienced, forming a symphony of hope that reminded me that, although I was returning to my routine, I carried a sacred secret. During the days of recovery, I found comfort and strength in the company of loyal friends like Marcus Jefferson and Evelyn Carter. On a quiet afternoon, as the sun timidly penetrated through the bedroom window, between contained tears and hesitant smiles, I confessed to them, I experienced something that transcends this world. I saw the light, and in it, I discovered the true story of our ancestors. I can't keep this truth to myself. Marcus, with a deep and serene look, held my hand and said, "Aurelia, the universe chose you to be the guardian of this legacy. Even if we don't speak on big stages or write bestsellers, the way you live and inspire those around you is what matters. Your transformation is a beacon. Evelyn added, firmly and affectionately, your light, even if silent, touches everyone who is lucky enough to cross your path. Your every word, your every gesture is a testament to resilience and the strength that resides in our people. These words resonated deeply within me, reaffirming that the mission entrusted to me was simple yet powerful, living the truth authentically, serving as a link between the pain of the past and the hope of the future. So I returned to my routine in Atlanta with a subtle sparkle in my eyes, which, although imperceptible to some, carried the intensity of a universe of revelations. With each chance encounter, as I walked through the city's vibrant streets, I realized that even without public speeches or grandiose declarations, the essence of what I had experienced was manifesting within me. The simple act of smiling, of offering an understanding look, of sharing a brief comment about the beauty of life, became a silent way of conveying the message that the true heritage of Black people was, first and foremost, a divine blessing. Each day that passed was a reaffirmation of my commitment to this sacred mission. I did not see myself as someone destined to write books or give lectures, but as a living witness, a bridge between ancestral teachings and contemporary challenges. The truth that had been revealed to me, the deep sense that suffering was transformed into strength, and that faith could illuminate even the darkest corners, guided every step of my journey. As the sun set over Atlanta, dyeing the sky with shades of orange and purple, I walked the streets knowing that my mission would not be forgotten. My existence, marked by the light of that transcendent experience, was now a silent tribute to resilience, hope, and the powerful truth that even in adversity, divine light and love always prevail.